seen that movie.
Paint the fence.
Okay.
Paint the fence. And James Higginbottom, you mentioned Esper Deathblade. One of the things, I have not seen Stoneblade in a while, mostly because it feels to me like Deathblade had kind of taken over the fort in that kind of archetype, but James is going straight with the classic.
Yeah, he's playing. You know, he doesn't have my favorite Magic card.
Deathrite Shaman.
Yeah, that's my favorite card. But we're going to see Greg Smith play Imperial Painter, and he's going to start off by playing Painter Servant. Again, Imperial Painter kind of hit the scene in a big way. We saw it make back-to-back finals appearances with Suarez winning overall with Mono Red in Baltimore, and then we saw Bressler make the finals of it before losing to Eric Rill in Cincinnati. So we're going to see the Painter Servant actually come into play, likely naming blue, of course, so that those blasts can be turned on. You see the hand here, Inquisition. You're going to see a Jaya Ballard, you've got a Pyroblast, you've got a Chandra Pyromaster, and 2 Mountains. So no Grindstone just yet, but not going to take too long to set up a kill here for Smith. Now, my big question is, I wonder what his matchup looks like against this particular deck, because you know that Esper Deathblade has virtually no basics, but for the Stoneblade version, you've got 2 islands, a plains, and a swamp.
So there are escapes from a Blood Moon for sure.
Yeah, which is a big deal.
We see the Pyroblast taken out. The blasts, Pyroblast, Hydroblast, Red Elemental Blast, Blue Elemental Blast, some of the best sideboard cards of all time, but particularly Pyroblast, Red Elemental Blast might be one of the best sideboard cards of all time.
Now, Smith drew for his turn a Grindstone. Now, the big question is, do you cast it this turn or not? I think that's a very real question to ask yourself right now, because you'd like to ideally lead off with a test spell to get the Forcible out of your opponent's hand, something of that nature. He's got a Chandra, he's got a Jaya.
I just do it. I mean, if he didn't get my Painter, I just do it.
He's just going to fast the turn back. It looks like he's going to try to pick a better spot. And, you know, it's certainly a risk. Here's a Ponder to start the turn here for Higginbottom. You take a look at Higginbottom's deck list. Of course, he's got the 4 Swords of Plowshares. Force of Will check 3 of those. So, it's a gamble. It's a gamble to run it out there, because if it does get Force, it's not the end-all be-all, but you like to get that Force on him, maybe like the Chandra. I think that's going to be the test spell, will be Chandra. I don't think it's going to be Jaya. But we could also see Jaya come out there too. So I think there's definitely some options here for Smith. As you see a shuffle there from the Ponder, Higginbottom, not liking those first 3 cards.
Yeah. I think the reason, I mean, it's possible that Higginbottom is holding back a removal spell for that Painter Servant, but for me, I feel like once the Servant hits, that's kind of saying that, you know, the gates are up. Go on in.
Sacrifice the Polluted Delta. We'll see if he's going to search for a basic or a non-basic. I think he's got a pretty good idea, does Higginbottom, what he's playing against. He's going to go get a basic island, so there is no Swords of Plowshares yet. So we might see Smith move in now, like on the next turn, and say, hey, it's Force of Will or bust, man.
James Higginbottom playing a deck that, it's funny because this deck was so ubiquitous not so long ago, but I haven't seen it played in a little while, mostly because of, as you were saying, the rise of Shardless Bug, the way that Esper Deathblade has kind of also moved in a little bit.
Yeah, Shardless Bug has just gotten so popular that, again, as Jerry Thompson had written, he'd basically convinced the people who were playing Esper Deathblade or Stoneblade, hey, Shardless Bug is just better at what you're trying to accomplish, which is being this mid-range blue deck that has a lot of options available to it. As Higginbottom does resolve the Ponder. Simian Spirit Guide the draw here for Smith, so are we going to go for it? And actually, I like going for it a lot here, and here's the reason why. Because if it gets countered by Force of Will, the Simian Spirit Guide allows him to actually still cast Chandra this turn.
Yep.
So his turn is still awesome. And so this is a great test spell, because, first of all, if he doesn't have it, he just dies. And yeah, and he doesn't have it.
Die.
So Grindstone plus Painter Servant is just going to end the game on the spot, and just that quickly, as we did see last round too. It does not take long in Legacy, my friend.
Now, one of the things that, if you're not a regular follower of Legacy, that you might be wondering is, how come he's dead? I don't understand. You know, the Grindstone only hits a couple of cards. Imperial Painter doesn't just make all of the, I should say Painter Servant, does not just make all of the cards in play the same color. It makes all of the cards anywhere the same color. And as a result, since everything is blue, Grindstone, when you hit the Grindstone, it'll just keep on triggering and keep on triggering and keep on triggering, and unless there's somebody like an Emrakul hanging around, that'll do her.
So we're going to see both players go to the sideboard, and that's where we're going to go as well. We'll start with James Higginbottom, which is where I will begin to see what he can do to fix things up in this particular matchup. 1 Massacre. He's also got 1 Sword of Feast and Famine, a Flusterstorm, a Disenchant, 2 Supreme Verdicts, 3 Surgical Extraction, 3 Meddling Mage, a Vindicated Duress, and an Engineered Explosives. So we'll go 1 by 1 very quickly. Your Massacre not going to be great in this particular matchup. Sword and Feast and Famine could be okay. What's going to end up happening is Painter Servant is going to come in and it's going to make everything blue, so it actually having protections from green and black is not going to be terribly relevant, but the fact that there could be some discarding and untapping of mana could be okay. So we'll see if that does come in. Flusterstorm, don't like in this matchup. Not going to counter the relevant cards. Disenchant, obviously love. It's an artifact-based combo deck. You've got 2 copies of Supreme Verdict, not so much. Surgical Extractions, again, not so much. Meddling Mage, kind of interesting. What do you name there? You're playing against a deck that has, and we'll go over Smith's deck list in a minute here, but are you playing against a deck that has main deck Red Blast to be able to take care of Meddling Mage? So how powerful is that card going to be? What do you name? It can be blown up by a bevy of 1 mana instants. 1 Vindicate, meh, kind of slow. Same thing can be said for Engineered Explosives, but you can play Engineered Explosives preemptively on either 1 or 2 to make sure that you don't get comboed out. And then a Singleton Duress, which of course I do like in this matchup where you're playing against a deck that has Blood Moon and Grindstone and all that good stuff. So a lot of good options here for Higginbottom as we move over to Smith's side.
Yeah. And just quickly before we do move over, I really like the Engineered Explosives. If you get 2 basics out, you can go to 3 and blow up a Blood Moon.
Yeah, you make a very good point.
Yep. Now with the other side of the table with Greg Smith, if it's not enough that he has 3 Pyroblast, 3 Red Elemental Blast main, he's got 1 more of each in the sideboard. I would be expecting those to come in against a Force of Will deck. In addition, his other cards are Magus of the Moon, another reasonable card to bring in, Manic Vandal, Phyrexian Revoker, Thorn of Amethyst, Ratchet Bomb, and Ensnaring Bridge. I think he's just going to bring in the blasts, go up to 8 blasts, bring in the Magus of the Moon, and then after that, I'd probably stop right there.
Okay. Well, Smith got an easy one game 1. Just presented a turn 1 Painter Servant named Blue. Turn 3, it's time to go for broke with the Grindstone. It did work out. No Force Will from Higginbottom. Did not have white mana for Swords of Plowshares to be able to break it up. So for Higginbottom, he's going to have to win 2 here. And he's against a deck that can be a little bit troublesome. Again, he's a 3-color deck. He does have basics, 4 of them in 2 island, 1 plane, 1 swamp. But Blood Moon can still just be the end-all, be-all.
One of the things about lots of decks in Legacy, there are so many non-basics that a Blood Moon or a Magus of the Moon can effectively make all of your mana be colorless for you. I mean, sure, they make red, but if you don't actually have any red symbols in your deck, you can sit there helpless with your whatever you have, your Tarmogoyfs, or in this case, your Stoneforge Mystics, just sitting, waiting, hoping to draw one of your rare basic lands in your deck.
So you see Higginbottom going to take a look at his 7 cards. He's going to be on the play here against Greg Smith. Both these players sitting at 3-0 off the fantastic starts here in the Legacy Open. Higginbottom's happy, as is Smith. Tundra to begin. You see a Blood Moon, now Imperial Recruiter over there in Greg's hand. So let's see how he wants to start things off. If he has any double lands, but just a simple mountain and passing the turn back.
It's a very nice looking Underground Sea.
He's not doing so bad on the dual land front. Here's a Stoneforge Mystic. Trigger is good. Gonna go search out an equipment. Which one is it gonna be? It is the Batterskull. Still waiting for someone to be on a Germ Token. Not sure who it's gonna be, but I know that someone's gonna win an invitational named Germ Token, so they can get their limelight every Sunday that we have a Legacy.
I don't
Open.
know that I would want to ever name that. In terms of if I were the winner of an invitational.
Yeah, I mean, you'd be a 0/0 and you'd be like gross looking and stuff, but you'd get a lot of use. And I think there's something to be said for getting a lot of use. As here's a turn 2 Blood Moon off of Ancient Tomb. Does this resolve?
It does. Wow, that Stoneforge Mystic, unless James Higginbottom... Nope, that's not a Plains.
Nope.
Unless James Higginbottom has a Plains, that Batterskull is going to be stranded in hand until he can find 5 mana to cast it the fairway. Here comes the Squire. 1/2.
And he's got triple red mana, nothing else, and you know he doesn't have a Force of Will, so likely he has almost nothing he can do in his hand outside of that Batterskull. GG Smith is going to play a mountain. Maybe he'll play an Imperial Recruiter this turn, search for the Painter Servant, or is he going to go with a Phyrexian Revoker as he slides some of his mana over?
His main deck includes 1 Phyrexian Revoker and another Revoker in the board, a reasonable answer to a card like Stoneforge Mystic or perhaps Umezawa's Jitte.
That's going to cost 3. Yeah, that's going to cost 3. And you see the players are going to make sure, because that Ancient Tomb, it's a mountain now. It is not an Ancient Tomb. So, triple the mana. He's got it. It looks like he's going to go searching for a Painter Servant. You do see Imperial Recruiter on the screen. That card, it's not a cheap one.
No, that is not. I know when it first was brought into decks, I was thinking to myself, well, you know, if I wanted to play that deck, that'd be a couple months' rent for me.
Yeah. Cheap on Magic Online, expensive IRL. That's for sure. So the Recruiter's going to start out a Painter's Servant, so Smith is going to try to start assembling the combo here. In comes the Stoneforge Mystic. Recruiter is just a 1-1, where Stoneforge is a 1-2. So no blocks, unsurprisingly. See if Higginbottom has a good follow-up play. You see that he's just all on red mana. Yet again, nothing he can do with those dual lands. Just going to pass the turn back. You just have to be a little bit wary of Forcible right now if you're Smith. As Smith's draw step for the turn is a Thorn of Amethyst.
Thorn of Amethyst makes non-creature spells cost 1 more. It's pretty cheap too. It only costs 2 mana. It's a great card against a deck like Storm, and it definitely has reasonable uses against a deck that's going to be using Brainstorm, Force of Will, and other such cards.
Smith's going to get in the red zone with this Imperial Recruiter. Not going to beat most people by damage, but you never know what's going to happen. Might as well get that damage in just in case. Here's Painter's Servant. There is a Thorn of Amethyst, so that's going to come into play. Shields are down now for Smith, so the Painter could be targeted by something. Not quite sure what, but again, he doesn't have access to the Red Elemental Blast right now with the mana to cast it, unless he's sandbagging a Simian Spirit Guide. But even then, it would cost 1 more.
It's true. James Higginbottom, let's say he had drawn that 5th land, he still couldn't have cast that Batterskull because the Thorn would say no.
So let's take a look-see here. He's got a blast in his hand. He's got... It looks like he just drew another Recruiter, so let's see what he's going to go tutoring up.
Let's see.
Yeah, and he's got a Spellskite in his deck, I would assume. Yeah, he's got one of those.
One Spellskite.
He's got a Jaya as well, which isn't the worst card in the world. Magus of the Moon. Could get additional Painter's Servants. Not sure if he boarded anything in. Has the Revoker in his hand already, does Smith.
I mean, it could be a Simian Spirit Guide if he decides he just needs a little bit more mana, but most likely with 5 mana out already, it's going to be some kind of action. I like Jaya, and it looks like Greg is going for the Jaya as well. Jaya, in combination with the Painter's Servant, means that you can just start activating Jaya's ability, and Jaya herself casts a version of Blast.
Sure. To be fair, you like red.
Well, I mean, I like Jaya. I've played Jaya in a lot of different tournaments.
Wow. You like the red cards.
Yeah. If you look at this, this is a Spell Shaper that casts kind of a version of Active Volcano. That's half of Active Volcano. It casts Incinerate. Well, kind of Incinerate. Well, it's Incinerate.
Yeah, it's Incinerate.
And it casts Inferno.
What I like here about the first ability too is that, of course, Painter Servant's going to make everything blue, so now you can start kind of going like land destruction mode if you want to. You know, you can get a little bit creative there with the Jaya.
Yeah, Jaya is an awesome card.
Yeah. Wish it would have saw more play during its standard run.
Yeah. I think I was the only one that played it in Hollywood.
So Higginbottom is in the old rock and a hard place right now because it looks like we're going to go to his discard step. And we are, and he's going to discard, it looks like Jace the Mind Sculptor, and pass the turn back.
Jace is another reasonable card to revoke.
Yep. Yeah. Ancient Tomb to draw here, so Ancient Mountain, actually.
Ancient Mountain Tomb.
Yeah, that's actually what's going to come into play. So 6 mana right now for Smith. Here comes the Jaya. He can start to go on land destruction mode. This again, destroy any blue permanent, discard a card, of course, to be able to do that. Let's see if Smith wants to put that Revoker in play or not. Not sure that it has a lot of use other than being discarded to Jaya for an activation. There's another non-basic for Higginbottom. Again, and this is the reason that you saw Suarez and Bressler be able to go win finals. As here's the Batterskull. It's going to cost 1 more, so I don't think so.
That doesn't make it work.
Yep.
Just because it has a creature attached to it doesn't make it a creature.
Yeah. Not quite yet. So for Higginbottom, he's going to have to back up really quickly here. But part of the reason that Suarez and Bressler were able to win the tournament, or Suarez was able to win, Bressler would make the finals, is because of how powerful Blood Moon was.
Yeah.
And Magus of the Moon. Turning off people's decks, not letting them actually play Magic. A lot of Shardless Bug decks out there. And Shardless Bug, if a Blood Moon resolves in the early turns, they're just dead.
Yeah.
They can't do anything.
Now, James Higginbottom was so excited to drop that Batterskull, but bad news for him. Every single card that Greg Smith draws can be a Stone Rain. Jaya, oh wow.
I'm going to take down the Stoneforge Mystic. A little bit surprising there. I mean, I guess maybe he wants to get into the red zone, but he doesn't have to worry about the Stoneforge all that much. I feel like he could go after a land. I mean, Higginbottom has to draw his 1 outer of a Singleton Plains to make that Stoneforge Mystic be relevant. So I would have preferred to take out a land in that situation.
I'm with you. I mean, to be fair, he does have a red elemental blast in hand.
Yeah.
So if he wants to, he can counter the blue Batterskull.
That's true. And he's going to play Reflection Invoker. We'll get confirmation on what this card is naming, but basically what Smith can do now is he can just go on the offensive for the rest of the game. As you mentioned, he does have the counterspell there for the Batterskull. Of course, Painter Servant going to be naming blue. Jace is the name.
Look at that.
Jace is the name with the Revoker, but Higginbottom actually did peel the plains.
A long time coming, one of the only basic lands in the deck. There's 1 plains, 1 swamp, 2 islands.
And as we have mentioned a couple times too, as Higginbottom looks like he's going to play a
Swords to Plowshares. Things just changed.
Yeah, I still think that you want to use the Red Elemental Blast to protect your card.
Remember, Swords to Plowshares, because the Servant is in play, is currently a blue card.
Now we don't know if Higginbottom has Force Will in his hand or not, and it looks like he does. It looks like he's not going to fight over that. At least we don't know if he does have Force. He's going to untap Will Smith, untap that Jaya too. She wants to get active. Grindstone time? Not yet. Just a City of Traders.
James Higginbottom, 6 mana in play, including a Plains. If I'm Greg Smith, the first thing I do is Jaya away that Plains. Yeah, just lock it out.
If Greg knows. Because it does, you know, if he, how familiar is he with his Jaya destroying any permanent with that card, any blue permanent, and that does classify itself as a blue permanent. He's getting in the red zone, so he does not know that interaction. He's going to come across for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points of damage. He's going to put Higginbottom down to 9.
I mean, it could just be that he thinks the game doesn't have to last that long.
Okay, that's fair.
I mean, I wouldn't want to make that risk, but Greg Smith with Painter on the left. James Higginbottom with Esper Stoneblade on the right. You wouldn't be able to tell, though, because he hasn't been able to play his game. The Painter deck, using Blood Moon and other cards, has just been locking him out of being in this match.
Just Smith not letting Higginbottom operate at all, but this is exactly what Smith's deck wants to do. He wants to play Blood Moon or Magus of the Moon early in the game so that you don't get to play Magic with me, and I will kill you at my leisure. And so far, through 1.5 games, everything is going according to plan.
If you're just joining us, I'm Adrian Sullivan here with Cedric Phillips, and this is the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Cleveland, Ohio. Make sure that you're joining in on the conversation here. Hashtag SCGCLE, and then you can find out all kinds of stuff happening. And one of the things that we have lots of players tweeting about their match results and about their day, and always follow at SCG Live.
All right, so a little untapped skis here. Higginbottom just going to pass the turn. He did have, again, the option to maybe do a little Batterskull action, but he chose not to. Everything going to come into the red zone here except for the Jaya. It's going to hang back. 2, 3, 4, 5 is what the attack will be for. So Higginbottom would go down to 4 if all of this damage gets through, but I've got a feeling he has a little something over there.
I know that a lot of players don't like Legacy for games like this, or games like a Storm game, which just seems to happen so quickly, but I love all of the things that are possible. We're seeing right now
this is why I love Legacy, yeah. And now we have an Inferno activation.
I mean, Jaya Ballard is being activated to cast Inferno to finish the game.
6 damage to each creature and each player. And if you don't like that, you don't like Magic.
I mean, this is what is awesome about Legacy, right here.
So, James, do you have a response?
I like his look there. He's like,
yeah.
oh god.
Yeah, I'm being.
Yeah,
that's
you got
good.
me. You got me.
I'm being infernoed by Jaya in Legacy. Yes, you are. Greg Smith wins this match 2-0 over James Higginbottom. Imperial Painter defeating Esper Stoneblade. Smith moving on to 4-0, off to a very, very nice start here in this 9-round Legacy tournament. Higginbottom can't get a win on camera.
No, and Greg Smith, I like how coolly he takes this win.
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I've seen his face break a little bit with some happiness, you know, because he's just been like, yeah, I'm cool, I've got this, I've got it taken down. And then maybe a friend of his said something. That was the first real breaking smile.
If I was infernoing someone, I would not be able to contain myself.
Oh, me too.
I would, I would be unbearable if I was activating Jaya to Inferno someone.
If you were activating Jaya to Inferno someone?
Yeah, I would be unbearable.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I would not want to be the person across from me.